Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, the middle of the week. Inside the Birds. Adam, the Eagles are headed into the bye, coming off just an absolute crushing loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Very, a one-sided game from start to finish. And the Eagles, I always say you never want to lose going into the bye. You don't want to get crushed going in the bye because the negativity just lasts for so long. It's the last thing you remember. But the Eagles have to sit on this for quite a while.
Yeah, they do. Look, the players are dispersed. Coaches have to work through the week, and then they have a little time off. But yeah, you hate to have that feeling that's your last game. And unfortunately, it was the site of the blowout loss in the playoffs. Their last game for last season. They've now lost 10 out of 13 games. Going back to last season, that's not good. I know people are like asking, who is this team? Like, what are they? It's a good question. We'll get into that later this week. We're going to have a bye week self scout, and we're also going to look at the roster, recent drafts, free agency. We're going to get into all that, kind of where players are. We'll let you know behind the scenes how guys are doing. But look, overall, you kind of earn what you do. There was a terrible performance. We talked about this in our post game show. We learned a little bit more, actually, a lot more. So they've got a lot of corrections to make going forward. There's no question about it. It's not just one side of the football. It's not just offense or defense. It's now special teams, which we thought was one of the better groups in the National Football League. You'd have a hard time saying that after a couple of bad gaffes the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, well, what's the expression? When it rains, it pours. I mean, just
Yeah.
when you think you're getting one area right, then another area falls down. But there was really no area that you could really pinpoint in that game against the Buccaneers. It was a three-phase meltdown: offense, defense, and of course, as you mentioned, special teams. And this is why there's a lot of negativity around the team right now. We don't normally, and I don't want to start now, but we'll comment on it a little bit because I do want your take on just
Sure.
what it means, right? We don't normally get into bulletin board stuff or what players say about other players, but I do think you know, we do this for the fans, right? We do this podcast. Well, it's our business, but we're not, the players don't listen. The fans listen. The people who want to know listen. And I respect the hell out of our fans and our listeners. And I know that, they're wired differently than you and I, where we don't think some of that stuff matters as much. So when I see, a day after the game, like Darius Slay is tweeting about all of his great accomplishments after he gets roasted in the game, and then B going on a podcast with a Dallas Cowboy, not a former Cowboy, like a
Yeah.
current Dallas Cowboy, and Micah Parsons of
And a
all.
great one. Yeah.
Yeah, I just say, like, man, I know that today's player is built a little bit differently, and these weren't around 20 or 30 years ago, but I think that there's a tone deafness there to the fan base that it's probably not a great thing. And if I were part of the PR staff, I was part of the coaching staff, I may want to say, hey, look, I don't normally tell you guys what to do with your free time, but I want you to understand that this is a product for the paying customer. The fans are the paying customers here. It doesn't mean they control your life, but you may want to have a little bit of awareness on what you're going to do out there in the public. And this might be one of those situations where you just say no this time. No thanks. I don't want to, not going to appear on the podcast at this time because it's just not right. It's going to rub a lot of our paying customers wrong. I understand that sentiment. I'm going to
Well,
defend
maybe
the
wait a
fan.
week. Yeah, maybe wait a week. But yeah, it's not a big deal to me now, unless I didn't hear it. I'm aware of it.
Mhm.
If if Slade took shots at his teammates or didn't defend them, that's a different story. If it's just to talk about what happened and whatever, okay, Tommy, you still wanted to wait a little bit, but it's to me, look, they got a lot of problems right now. I mean,
Mhm.
probably a little bit more than I anticipated. The pass rush, which we talked about in the training camp, we thought it wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be good. We thought we had issues. Andrew Checo and I specifically, because we were there, and we were like, "Wow, this could not look good," and it's
Mhm.
really bad. So they they've got a lot of issues, man. I'm a little surprised that going forward, the issues are as expansive as they are. One week to next, you have no idea what the hell you're getting from this team. That's the thing. I get it. They've had injuries that are pretty significant on offense, but after 4 weeks, you'd like to have a good handle of what a team is, right?
Right.
And right now, I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that some teams, that's an okay expectation. Not the Eagles, because you were expecting more. You have a lot of veterans. I mean, you have a lot of young players too. They've turned over the roster. But the point is, you have a lot of players who are wear that label as being elite or high paid or Pro Bowl or All Pro. And I get that they have injuries, so that's impacted them. But we've talked about some other teams that have overcome their injuries. And they're just not, you don't know about this team. And that's okay if you're sort of building up, but it's not okay if you're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. It doesn't mean the Eagles can't get right. And you and I had to talk about this. We're not going to, we do not overreact our best in September. Like we have learned to not just write
Mhm.
off a team in September. There are certainly avenues for this team to get better and get or just play better. I don't know if there's avenues for personnel to just change, but to play better. Um, and they can, but they do have a lot of work to do. They have more work to echo your point, which is I hit on the head. I could understand if they were 2-2 because one area of the team was really holding them back, like defense or offense or quarterback or cornerback play. Like it's been really bad for years before this year. But there's more questions and more issues than I thought with this team, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, look, the coaching staff bears probably a decent amount of responsibility for this.
Sure.
Obviously, the players are out there; they have to take responsibility as well. It's not just one area of the team. It's not just one particular player. It's also front office wise. Hey, they made trades for players. They signed players who are not performing. Is it just because it's early, they're not getting it, or could they not play? Could they not play in this game? Bryce Huff. Like, what are the issues? We'll get into that as well going forward here. But man, it's been puzzling, man. I'm DeCecco and I were at 11-6. I don't know where you are, but I still, in fact, I know with their schedule, they absolutely have a very good chance to do that. If
Yeah.
you look at their next 4 games, they host an awful Browns team. Their quarterback, Deshaun Watson, the only reason why he's starting is because of his contract. He's awful.
Right.
Daniel Jones and the Giants are a little bit better than people expect. They're still 1-3. The Bengals aren't playing good football, and the Jaguars are horrendous. All right, that's the Eagles' first 4 games after the bye. So to think the Eagles can't be a playoff team is delusional.
All right.
This is
So
a
I,
really
I've
good
been
schedule.
I think you're bringing up a great point, and I've been trying to reconcile how I feel about that as well
Doesn't
because
mean they're good though.
that's exactly what I was going to say.
I'm just trying to make that clear.
Let's say the Eagles go like 4-2 over their next 6 games, right, and get themselves to what are they now 2-2? Let's say
Yep.
they yeah. So they're like 6-4. But even those wins against Jacksonville or Cleveland or the Giants are just kind of like, yeah, you won by 6 here. You won by, it's important. Every game wins. But I think that there's an expectation that this team is supposed to not just win, but to dominate inferior opponents so that when you are in the playoffs and you are a 10 or 11 win team, you're not worried about losing on the road that first round game against maybe Tampa as a wild card, or something like that. I don't know. I think the expectations were this team is supposed to look like one of the best teams in the NFL. Of course, you're going to have close games. Like the Lions are one of the best teams. They lost to the Bucks. Okay, you're going to have that once in a while, but to this discussion, they haven't played a game yet where you've been like, man, that's a good looking team right there.
Right,
And three more
right.
wins that leave you the same way in the next 5 games probably aren't going to make you feel better about that.
So let's go to 2022 on the point you just made, right? They
Mhm.
they Vikings, they beat them by 17 in week 2, right? They played the Commandos in week 3. They won 24-8. If you just go through this, they had the rain game against the Jaguars. They came back and won. That was a fantastic performance considering how badly they played early on and then to come back in the rain like they did. That's when Trevor Lawrence had like 5 turnovers. Now, they smoked the Steelers in Philly in week 8, 35-13. That I mean, they smoked the Titans. That was an embarrassment. They just crushed them by 25. They crushed the Giants. Again, if you go on your point, if you go through some of these games, yeah, they blew out teams. Look, you can't play perfect every week. Like
Right.
even if you think you have a good roster, the other team gets paid too. Some of these games will be a little bit closer than you'd like, but when you look at their first 4 games, now again, this is the Green Bay game week 1. This game that Jordan Love got hurt in the last play. They barely won. That was a knockdown, drag out fight. That was a very
Mhm.
emotional game. Give them credit. That was a hell of a win. Then you look at week 2. That was the choke against Atlanta. Hurts played poorly. They still should have won the game. The defense then collapsed late on that last drive.
Well, their defense was awful. Run defense was terrible
It's terrible,
all
right?
games long.
Hurts
Yeah.
didn't play well. The run defense was bad. Still, they
Right.
very good chance to win despite all that.
Mhm.
They had a pride game in week 3. The defense was phenomenal. Hurts made plays without his best targets. He made plays when he had to. Won a great performance, but he still made plays. Week 4, they just didn't show up.
Yeah.
And one other thing I want to mention, and I don't, we try not to blame people. We just bring up stuff that people should be aware of. But the hydration and cramping issue, what the hell, man?
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up.
Come on.
I'm glad you brought it up. First of all, one thing I'll say, my mother lives in South Florida. I was talking to her the other day, and she told me that, and this is not to absolve, it's just to paint a picture. She
Yeah.
told me that it has been way hotter and humid in South Florida this year than she can ever remember before. She said it has been
Hmm.
worse than she can ever remember. So, okay. In fact, when you and I were doing the the Friday podcast, we
Right.
looked
Yeah.
at and we said it says 87 going to feel like 94, 95. So we knew it was hot and humid. Well, it wound up being like 10 degrees
Worse.
more
Yeah.
worse,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
But to your point, this Eagles team has played in South Florida before, right? Like everybody's played there in
They
September.
know it well.
They
Exactly.
know it well.
They don't.
Whatever happened to the days of like Andy Reid had this team prepared? Remember the
Oh,
pickle juice
uh,
game? Like there were
yeah.
times where, yeah, of course, we said there would be 1 or 2 players. It happens every time that are going to have to come out. They're going to get cramped up. But to have that many players, it does feel like a preparation element was not sufficient there. And you're right, that falls on team coaching, leadership, management overall. And that is surprising to me. And I want to parlay it into this though, Adam,
Yep.
because before what we're going to do in this podcast is put a bow on the game, talk a little bit about the news that came out of the press conferences, and then finish it off with a little bit of the transactions and snap counts. But I want to bring this up because you and I talked about it and it's important. There is a lot of fire the head coach, fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach.
4 weeks. I mean, come on. Really?
It's a little crazy after 4 weeks, and I get that it's not just 4 weeks, right? It dates back to last year, but I just wonder when people say fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach, do they not realize that since Andy left, Nick Sirianni, if he's fired this year or whether before the year ends or this year, you're talking about an average head coach for the Eagles on what, 4.5 years. I'm sorry, Chip was 3, Doug was 5, and then Nick would be 5. So that's 13 over 3. You're like 4.5. That's not good. I don't care that you won a Super Bowl and you went to one. It's not good for any franchise to be on a new head coach every 4.5 years. It shows that there's something wrong. It shows that even if you're doing something good, you're then neutralizing it by doing something terrible as a franchise to have to fire guys that quickly. So I just wonder, what's your faith as a fan? Like, fire Nick Sirianni, get rid of him. That the next guy is gonna be the guy that winds up finding some longevity. Because if they fire Nick Sirianni after this year, you can blame Nick all you want, and he probably deserves a lot of it. But you have to look at the bigger umbrella here and say, what is the Eagles' problem with their inability to find stability in not only the head coach, but the millions and thousands, as The Rock would say, and the thousands of position coaches and coordinators that you're running through every freaking year? That would be bad.
Yeah, I mean, Nick's only in his 4th year. They made the playoffs the first 3 years. I've had my issues when I don't think the team was prepared. Like this past game was embarrassing. Let's put AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Lane Johnson to the side for a second. Obviously, it's a factor. We know that. But I always say this about coaching: the stuff you control, you got to control. The tackling was embarrassing. Okay, that's totally unacceptable. Okay, the quarterback not getting rid of the football, still slowest snap to release of any quarterback. It's been like that. It wasn't good last year. It's gotten way worse. And that's on Nick. They got to get, and that obviously Kellen Moore's the OC. They got to get the ball off Hurts' hands. That's stuff they can control. I don't know what it is, why they can't get him to get rid of the football. Mike Gill brought this up on Football at 4 on Tuesday. It's fair. Maybe it's a lack of trust in pass targets. I can't. Nobody can get into Hurts' head. Only he knows why. This has been an ongoing. This is a real problem last season. It wasn't a problem 2 years ago when it was one read, bombs away down the field, best deep throw in the National Football League. I don't know what the hell's happened to him. It's again, I'm not gonna. I try not to make excuses for players. We already know what he's not working with. He doesn't control that. He controls it when a guy's open to throw the goddamn football. Okay, when it's protected. I know there were protection problems. Okay, there were plays there to be made. There were plays there to be made. Not every play Hurts was under pressure, and it wasn't his fault. Like you gotta. It's funny though. There were times last year he'd hang in there under pressure
Yeah.
and throw the football.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I remember what ruined Kevin Cobb's career. We haven't talked about this in a while. When he all of a sudden, without pressure, would move to his right, like literally no pressure at all. He had a default setting: run to the right, try to create space. Why are you doing that? You were not taught to do that. I remember checking in on it. It was 2010 or something, whatever the hell year it was.
Mhm.
So Jalen's got some bad habits. This is on Doug Nussmeier, the coach too, and Sirianni, and obviously the offensive coordinator, Kellen
Right.
Moore, to reach him, to get him to play the right way, the way they want it, regardless of who's available. They don't
Right.
control who's available. They control what he does.
Right.
And he
And
does. He controls himself.
sure. And on the flip side to that, and we're going to get into the coaching decision. I thought Vic was actually out coached this past game, but in general,
Fair enough.
against Atlanta, I don't think he was out coached. I think the players just played terribly. We talked about the D line getting zero penetration, right? But to the point here on coaching, though, they have gone through now. Vic is now the fourth defensive coordinator in the last 3 years, from Gannon to Desai to Patricia to Vic, right? And yet they still continuously do the same things that are bad, which is whether it's soft coverage, not able to defend motion, not able to defend well bunch formation. So we go saying fire this coach, fire, but you keep putting a different person there, and the personnel is doing the same thing. There's a strange disconnect going on, and
You think it's a person? Are you basically saying it's a personnel issue?
I don't. I think I'm saying I don't know the root of it, but even though it's different people, it's been the same problems, and so maybe it is a organizational philosophy. We don't want to give up explosive plays, so we're going to hire people who want to play predominantly zone or so. Like I feel like the Eagles would never hire a Todd Bowles type defensive coordinator or a Aaron Glenn type because they don't want blitz because they
Oh, I don't agree
analytically
with that. I don't agree with
the
that.
proof
But
is
I
in the
know what you.
is the proof not in the pudding? They haven't had a
No, but
good
you
head.
want. Yeah, but you. By the way, you could if you've got good corners, you absolutely could blitz. I mean, look, Aaron Glenn, his problem was blitzing too much. There was change when Aaron.
But he's more aggressive, is my point.
He is,
Yeah.
but he figured out a way to do it more selectively to not kill your secondary. There's a way you
Hmm.
can do it. But and why is Ball so good at it? It his disguise is phenomenal. No, Vic, let's get over
Right.
to Fangio. This past game, it's like he says one thing. Well, we told those guys we wanted them to play. I don't have the transcript in front of me,
Hmm.
but we told them we wanted them to play up, and they didn't play up. Like, okay,
And I feel like we've been hearing that for 4 to 5 to 6 years now. Like, and I don't understand
are you
why
saying maybe you can't reach them?
why do the coaches change? Why do the players change? But like the same issues result. So is this on just talent procurement? I mean, certainly we've talked about that. You've got at times substandard safeties through either the draft or free agency. You've had substandard corners through the draft or free agency or trade market. Linebacker continues to be an area where in coverage they get roasted and they don't know where to be. That's been a perennial. So maybe it is, like I said, the umbrella organization of what they look for in back end defensive players. We all know the Eagles are pretty good in developing front end defensive players, but they have not been consistently good in drafting and developing back end defensive players. So maybe that's the issue. But my only point is that it's just odd that no matter everybody says fire this coach, they
Yeah,
do. They bring in a new one. They
it's
try
still
to
problem.
bring a new and the same problems
Yeah.
persist. So that's all. That's the big
Well,
mystery.
on your point though, see, the people want Sirianni fired. Hell, I'm in a doctor's office earlier this week. The doctor brings it up. Has Jeffrey ever fired anyone after 4 weeks? Or I'm like, come on, really? You really? This guy's a huge sports fan. Knows what I do, knows what you and I do. So I just saw it's funny. I get friends text me or season ticket holders. They want him out, Sirianni out. But also, here's another thing: be careful what you wish for. What is like Kellen Moore is the obvious choice if Laurie did something in season, which he's highly unlikely to do. He's done it once and he did it because he had to. He
Mm.
wanted Chip Kelly out of the
Are you
building.
sure? Are you sure it's not Dom?
What do you mean? What do you
Are
mean
you
by
sure
no?
Dom wouldn't be the head coach if
Oh. The fans would love it. Don, by the way, played football briefly at Penn State.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but it's just funny. It never changes. Like it's funny. I remember as a Sixers fan, I wanted Randy. Who the hell was it? Randy Ayers was briefly their head coach after
Yes.
Larry Brown.
Yeah.
I remember not renewing my season tickets. I remember the Sixers called me. I said, I'm not renewing. The guy can't coach.
Right.
I know enough about hoops that I know this was a terrible mistake.
Uh-huh.
I just couldn't. So because I don't want to give money to people when I know it has no chance, and the
Mhm.
people in charge don't know this. I'm sorry, I can't.
Sure. No, hey, man, this is why Eagles fans are really upset. They pay a lot of
Right.
money. They
I
want
now
the
now
better
on that
product.
point, they have a reason to be pissed off. Well, we've always
Mhm.
said this about doing the show and people being pissed off. If you want to yell and scream, go ahead. It's your money. It's your life. Do whatever the hell you want. But
Yeah.
be realistic. It's just 4 games. The division's not very good. The NFC's got warts, okay? They still are very likely to make the playoffs, whether they're a wild card or division winner. Now, I get on your point, that's not good enough for Jeffrey. It shouldn't be. You should never aspire just to be at a certain level, but just be realistic that maybe the roster, and we're going to get more into this in future shows this week. The cool thing about them being on the bye, we could get to a lot of stuff we wouldn't have time for. We've got something planned for you guys. We're going deep into the roster later this week. I already got notes, man. I can't wait to do that. But they've got issues. A little bit, I'll be honest with you, a little bit greater than I anticipated. I'm going to be wrong in a couple things if this bleep continues, particularly the
Mhm.
pass rush. I said it was not good coming out of training camp.
Mhm.
I had no idea it's actually not competitive as a pass rush.
Yeah,
It's terrible.
it really is.
Guys are
It is.
trying, but they're getting engulfed. They're getting moved off the ball. You saw some tape earlier this week. I can't. Is Fangio a bad coach? Like, what the hell's going on here? Like, the guy's been pretty well respected. Why can't, and Clint Hurts, a very good defensive line coach, why can't they get pressure? That's on your
Right.
point.
Right.
So after the season's over, if what we're seeing for 4 weeks, again, it's only 4 weeks, if it's still what we see after the season's over, whatever the hell that is, they're gonna have a new staff. That's the way
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Well, rinse. What do I always like to say? Wash, rinse, repeat with the Philadelphia Eagles and their coaching staff.
No one hires and fires. This is
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah, and that's when they make the playoffs. When they don't, when they disappoint,
Yeah.
it goes nuclear, as we've seen
Well, listen, I'll
quite
be
often.
honest with you though. So
Hmm.
there's sometimes you and I know this because we actually reported some of the stuff.
Hmm.
We heard behind the scenes this coach, the players hate this one particular coach.
Sure.
Won't get into who that guy was. It was many years ago in defense. Some guys are just not very good. And unfortunately, sometimes people upstairs find out about it too late.
I
When
agree.
you know what I mean? So that
Yes, you
they,
have to correct a mistake if you make a mistake.
yeah,
I believe that. But if you're making repeated mistakes, then you have to look at your process and say, why are
perfect,
we
great
repeatedly
point.
making
Right.
mistakes?
Listen, folks, we feel your pain. We hate, how many times we've said on the show we hate bad football?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, seeing it because remember I didn't notice it. Maybe in the game they did show it. We all saw what happened during the playoff game against Tampa. That face that he made.
Mm,
Oh, if looks could kill, and then he's got to deal with his BS again.
yeah.
I mean, this is a problem. So we'll see what happens. But again, they have a bye now. They have a lot to correct.
Right. So we talked about the hydration, and again, almost inexcusable if you're going to be prepared for that. Let's talk about the offense. Everybody knows defense stunk, but the offense was handicapped obviously with the loss of obviously no AJ Brown, obviously no Lane Johnson, obviously no Devontae Smith. So they were very much handcuffed. But watching the tape, it's not like nobody's ever open. And I think Dallas Goddard. We have to come down equally hard on him as we do anybody else. He dropped a beautiful
Oh,
ball from Jalen Hurts on the first drive of the game or second drive, first down, second drive. That really, I kept saying it's so important for them to be ahead of the sticks, not in 2nd and 10, not in 3rd and 10. And Dallas Goddard, he makes some difficult catches look easy, but he has games where he makes easy catches look hard. And that was, I mean, you couldn't have asked Jalen to throw a better ball because the nickel Christian Isian, is that how you pronounce it?
Izian, yep,
Isian was there, but his back was turned. The coverage was tight, but his back was turned. Jalen put it in there, and that drop was bad.
terrible.
And when you combine that with Jalen Hurts, Adam, who said after the game, I guess that he meant to throw the ball away, where he rolled out to the right on the first play of the game. Saquon Barkley is wide open.
I know.
The defender had to leave him because Hurts is starting to run right out of the pocket, and he's wide open. That's a throw that is tough to make, but when you're Jalen Hurts and you're expected to make that, you got to make that throw. You got to at least try the throw and not just throw it out of bounds.
Yeah, and I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that Kellen Moore was asked about it on Tuesday during his press conference, and he just never is critical. If you're reading between the lines, he it sounded like he kind of thought that Jalen should have made the throw, but
Yeah.
he also described how tough, that situation.
Yep. It's not an easy throw.
It's
I'm
not. It's
agreed.
not.
It's not an easy throw,
Absolutely
but
not.
he's
It's not.
made that throw before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so
But the gotta drop, man. You can't have that. You just I don't understand.
bad.
I know players drop passes around the National Football League all the time. Dallas has had this issue with catch it balls right in his damn hands. This has been an ongoing issue for him.
Yep.
He doesn't drop a lot of passes, but when he does, sometimes they're just right in their hands, and it's kind of like in MLB when an outfielder is going for a ball and you go, wow, it hit the heel of his glove. Why didn't he catch the baseball? Can't they only they know they took their eye, whatever the case may be, can get in Goddard's head, but that cost them because in a game where they just don't have enough going for them offensively, it's like 3 and out. People are like crying, why doesn't Barkley get the football? They can't move the football, folks. It's 3 and out. What do you? It's like,
I
to
know.
run the ball the game, guys. I love that stuff. I hear you. Barkley's great, but when you can't throw the ball, when you can't get anything going in your pass game, you're 3 and out. You're already behind 14-0 and five, whatever the hell the time frame was. The game's essentially over after 2 series. Like
Yeah.
it ain't gonna happen, folks.
I will say this though, and this is where I'll criticize coaching a little bit and Kellen Moore. On the Eagles' first 4 possessions, on the first play of each possession, they passed the ball the first 3 times and
Yep.
didn't run the ball until the 4th time on the first play. I don't. To me, I don't understand now. Again,
I
we have to
agree
find
there.
out more. This
Yeah.
could be a Jalen Hurts thing. It could be a Kellen Moore. I don't know why you don't just say, I don't care if it's boring. I don't care if it's predictable. I'm going to come out in 13 personnel. I'm going to put my quarterback under center, and I'm going to turn around and have him hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley because those are my best weapons. I still have a good offensive line, even though Fred Johnson, he did struggle
Oof.
in pass pro, but
Yeah.
run blocking, I don't think as much. And my best weapon at this point is Saquon Barkley. Why don't I impose my will on the defense and run with Saquon Barkley and my big guys up front? And instead, they tried to open it up for the running game by throwing early, which I get. If you're full strength, I got no issue with that. But every once in a while, you got to say, you know what? I'm not what I should be, but this is my strength. Let's do this.
I don't disagree with you, and I understand the sentiment because they simply could not move the ball in the passing game at all.
Yeah.
It was always my problem with Andy Reid that I didn't quite understand analytics or that you benefit from throwing early in the game. Historically, go back to the 60s. You win more games than you lose when you throw the ball early in the games, way more than you run. However, there are times you always have to have exceptions. The one thing that you have is you have an incredibly gifted back who's Barkley's been great. It's a great free agent signing to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, you could change it up, find something that could work. But the thing is, and I know how coaches think. If you don't get 4 or 5 yards, explosive plays, 5 yards or more, that's an axiom for coaching.
Yeah.
It's 5 yards or more. If you don't get that, they're going to start throwing it. They just don't. Coaches don't want to throw the football and the pressure to score within that building. You know how it is with coaches who've worked there. They know it. They know it. You got to be a passing team, but you also have Barkley. So it's. I'll be interested to see what happens in the self scout for them. We'll have our own self scout in a future show in the next week. I'll be interested to see what happens when they get Brown and Smith back, because remember AJ Brown's played one game this season, one game.
Yep.
And we don't know now what that's going to look like because remember we were saying going into the season, okay, you've signed Saquon Barkley, you got to run the ball more to justify the contract, $12.5 million a year, but you also have AJ Brown, Smith, and Goddard. Like, what's the happy? Like, how are you going to make this work?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so interested to see what they do going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I will finish off the offense with this. When the Eagles traded for Jahan Dotson, I think we were about as honest as we could be. We did an emergency intel episode, and we basically tried to be as objective as possible. We said, look, the Eagles absolutely needed someone who can come in, who is experienced, who has some credentials to him. Maybe he was a disappointment in Washington, right? But at least you're not throwing a rookie like Johnny Wilson in there, right? And asking him to do too much. But we also said there's a reason Washington traded him and that he had been an underperformer. We talked about lack of physicality that you had to be prepared for and that he would have to learn the offense.
There's more than that, by the way, a lot more than that.
Yeah. But that's really how we summarized it. And I, dared to question whether giving a 3rd-round pick was too much for a player who had underperformed. I think it's it's a fair reprisal of that question. He has been a non-factor in the offense, and I mean, he's not. He gets knocked off of his routes. It's not like he's never open, but because I know Nick Sirianni said sometimes open the ball just didn't go his way, but he's not been a factor whatsoever in the offense, and I can't say I sit here and say I'm totally shocked by it.
I don't want to say I expected it, but I'm not surprised at all that he's not been a factor. Now, I can only defend him in one way because we're going to give you more information. But this is his third offense of the past year. You had the old offense before they fired Ron Rivera. You have the new Cliff Kingsbury offense, and now you have by the way, it's just different terminology than he had to learn before. Now you have another new offense. He has to learn a new scheme. It's hard to do. But on your point, when you're
That's okay. I agree, but I'm sure we
it's
could talk
hard.
about Olamide Zaccheaus doing well in Washington on his
Yeah,
first
no.
team
I
in
listen.
3 years.
As Lamine Zaccheaus, not only did he beat him out, I remember visiting Washington the first week of training camp. They're already telling me he's ahead of Dotson. I'm like, how the hell is that even possible? Well,
Right.
guess what? What happened was Dotson didn't have a good offseason.
Hmm.
They wanted him off the roster. He also didn't compete hard enough. They were done with him. He's a good kid off the field, but as a football player, they were done with him.
Yeah,
And I don't know
clearly.
if they were going to cut him. They were looking to move him. They didn't want him on the roster. As I said before, and it's kind of laughable, the fact that they felt they didn't give a crap whether they trade him to the Eagles in their division, who, by the way, now, we didn't know Washington would be this good. And again, it's their schedule. They've benefited from a good schedule, but they're better than people thought. The fact that they traded into a team that's really competing against them
Hmm.
tells you a lot. That tells you what they thought of the player. You don't have,
Yeah.
it can't be argued against because it's a fact. They trade him in division, folks. That tells you everything.
Right. Like when the Eagles traded Donovan McNabb
Same
to
thing.
Washington
Yeah.
because
They
they
didn't care.
were
They
not
thought he was
afraid.
done.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. By the way, a guy we talked about that we thought would work well in the offense, to your point about Dotson having to learn a new offense, very fair. I was, I'm bringing up Olamide, but it is fair. Noah Brown was a free agent. And he was a player who does know Kellen Moore's offense and has played in Kellen Moore's offense. And guess what? Washington signed him as a free agent, just cost money, not a lot, after they traded Dotson to the Eagles. And Noah Brown has like 100 yards receiving right now, and Dotson has 25.
Ooh.
So the Eagles literally, without giving up a third round pick, could have gotten a player who knows their offense already, who was a free agent, who's not like some high price guy, and slid him in there. But obviously, that wasn't the decision that they made.
All right. So on Noah Brown, first of all, he signed a 1 year veteran minimum deal. I think the Texans owed him money.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably had an offset. So he's in a sense playing for free. See, once a player has played in the NFL, it's irrelevant whether guys are first round pick. Literally means nothing. It's about what you've done in the pros. Once you've played, it doesn't matter what you did in college. In terms of evaluation, it's what you've done. Noah Brown was a good special teams player. Then over a series of years, they gave him a chance to be a receiver. It's a good player, just under 6'2". And here's the thing I don't understand on your point. It's not like they signed him in July. They signed Noah Brown after the Texans cut him
Right.
on August 29th.
Right.
It's around the time that they made the trade for Dotson.
I just listen
Yeah,
again. They needed a player. Dotson was someone who can play the position, but it felt hasty to just give up a third round pick
exactly.
for a guy who, he's a first round. It almost felt like
Doesn't
how he
matter.
had like the fan in him, like, oh, it's a first round pick, shiny toy, right? Instead of really doing some like thorough like analysis here and evaluate like what went wrong. Why does my division rival want to give me this player? It's surprising to me. Howie's usually very good with trades, but so that one surprised me. And our friend John Kime, who works for ESPN, he covers Washington
Hmm.
Commanders, did a whole thing on how good Noah Brown is when he doesn't have the ball in his hand, as far as like rub routes, blocking, downfield blocking, pick plays, just being in the right spot and freeing up other teammates, which, some physicality is something that the Eagles have needed without AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. So,
One thing I would add, by the
mhm.
way, so Zacchaeus did start the season with the ones, but he's been usurped by the aforementioned Noah Brown. Noah Brown is now starting opposite McLaurin. Uh, McCaffrey's their 3, and Zacchaeus is their 4, which is really the best position for Lambeday.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, the thing they're probably learning more than ever. They're going to have to address this in the offseason. They may do it at the trade deadline, by the way, which
Mhm.
is 5 weeks from now. It's November 5th on Tuesday at 4 Eastern. But they're going to have to do a better job of developing. And it's kind of on your point you were saying minutes ago about developing the back end of the roster. They've got to figure out a better way to develop the receivers, the backups, the two studs. I mean, they're great.
Yeah,
Devontae Smith's been great from day one.
right.
AJ, what a great trade that was for AJ Brown. But where they and you could point the people in our market love to point the finger at people. You could blame the general manager if you want. You could also blame the coaches.
Hmm.
They've got to do a better job of developing the back end of roster on receivers. They can't just walk in. As much as we want to criticize Hurts, it's not his fault that these guys are number fives and number sixes as receivers. They're not twos or threes or even fours. They're
100%.
fives and sixes, really. Let's be honest
100%.
about it. Dotson maybe a four. He ain't playing like it.
Hmm.
So they got to do a better job. Again, it's more of an off-season conversation, but you know what? If this is going to be a playoff team and they want to play heavy 11 personnel, which is really what Kellen Moore wants to do, they've got to figure out a better way to do better with the back end of the roster at receiver.
Absolutely. All right. Just I mean, on defense, yeah, they tackled really poorly. Um,
Again,
I think after watching it, here's what's surprising a little bit to me, where we usually don't question coaching because, like, Vic Fangio's done this a long time, but the Bucks do what they always do, or they have
I
this
think
year.
you can question coaching if it's
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
Bring it
yeah,
up.
yeah. I'll question this. The Bucks, the Bucks are Liam Cohen is their offensive coordinator. He's a Sean
Mhm.
McVay disciple.
Yeah.
Done some great things also at Kentucky with their offense. They scored a
Mhm.
lot of points when he was their
Coach
coordinator
Will Levis,
twice.
didn't he? Did he coach for
Yes,
Levis?
Levis and the kid from Jersey, Devin Leary, who's
Okay.
in the NFL with somebody. But
Yeah.
um, so they you saw the Buccaneers. They were 11 personnel, but not spread, like very condensed. Guys tight to the line of scrimmage, right? So it looks like you might try to run out of these which they did out of these formations. You got three receivers all bunched in there, and Vic played a lot of man.
He
And
said
or
that
a lot
too.
of yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of cover three, which you bring the safety up. So you have a lot of your defenders in the middle of the field, right, against these condensed formations. And that left the edges open. And after like the fourth or fifth play, it was pretty clear that the Bucks were just going to either attack the edges where the voids were, right? Or they were going to use a lot of motion, especially if the Eagles were in man, to try to get Maddox running through traffic left and right and having to catch up with Godwin, which is very difficult. And they attacked horizontally. They did not throw the ball down the field until maybe their third drive. They were just basically throw to the running back, throw to the tight end, throw to Godwin on a quick. And Vic took I thought too long to get out of this man, to get out of this one high low. If you're going to get beat underneath, if you're going to have throwing them underneath, at least bring two safeties back so that you can make you can gang tackle, right? So I know everybody's upset about the Eagles tackling woes and they were bad, but to me, what really stood out on top of that was that once the first guy couldn't make a tackle, there wasn't a second or third guy in proximity enough because of how the schemes were going up against each other. It just seemed odd that they waited so long to change it up. And then, of course, you mentioned the soft coverage. I mean,
I mean,
you
free
can't
access.
give 12 yards or 15
Ridiculous.
yards to Sterling Shepard on 3rd and 12 and let him get first down like
Who
that.
was only playing because two guys were hurt, and they had to play him on the outside where he's not great, but he still got the job done. You know what this game reminded me of? Ironically, against Tampa. 2021, it was the first year with Gannon as a defense coordinator, and it was pitch and catch for Brady. It was so ridiculous. I remember we crushed their defensive game plan. The
Mm-hmm.
game wound up being close. They lost 28-22, but the Eagles scored. It really wasn't that close. They were down 28-7. They scored the final 14 points
Yep.
or whatever the hell it was to make it closer than it really was. But it was so ridiculous. Brady had so much space. They made it so easy for him. We know that Godwin is maybe the best NFL's best slot receiver. He's unreal inside because he's a vertical slot. I mean, the guy could run. He's great inside. He's got great size for that position. He's a great feel for it. Coming in what the scheme is, you know what they're going to do. And when the reason why you reduce receivers is you give them less space to have to worry about. That's what a coach told me who worked for Sean
Mm-hmm.
McVay, who we were talking about, because they reduce splits, they condense them. You would think that would somehow benefit the Eagles in some way, but it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy. That game that I talked about, listen to the players who are no longer in the lead. Not AJ Brown, Antonio Brown, 9 for 93 and a touchdown.
I
OJ
remember it.
Howard scored against them.
Oh my God. And he looked like Rob Gronkowski against
Yeah,
them in that game.
exactly.
Yeah.
Former first rounder, but he never became that guy.
Right.
Leonard Fournette had 2 rushing touchdowns. It was Brady was so surgical, but it was 34 for 42.
Oh
Are you
my, that,
bleeping serious?
and this goes back to my
Sorry for
point about you
shouting.
keep changing players and changing the same thing is happening.
Come on, Vic, be better. We are allowed to. If it's bad, we're allowed to talk. It's our job to bring it up. It's just not acceptable. You got to, and this idea. Okay, well, they wanted him to press more and they didn't. Then call timeout.
Yeah.
Tell Nick you need a timeout. Get on their bleep.
Yeah, I mean, or
Okay.
play somebody else and tell the guy on the bench, take Ringo and say, "I'm putting you in, and if you don't press, I'm putting you right back out. I
Yeah.
know how hungry you are to play." Or Isaiah Rodgers, you want to play? You've been hungering to
He's
play.
healthy.
Get in
Rodgers is
there,
healthy now. Look,
get in
he's
there, and play up
absolutely
on him.
healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make a play. If not, I'm just gonna take you right back out
Come
and let
on,
the
man.
it's embarrassing. But I don't want to take credit away. I thought the scheme that Tampa Bay and Cohen ran well. Like they lined up Evans and as like the number one outside in a reduced split, but then they would take the number two and sort of shift him to the outside. That would draw the corner to the outside in the zone, especially, and line up Evans against a safety. So Evans did a lot of work against Reed Blankenship and CJ Gardner Johnson instead of your top corners because of scheme. Now, that being said, what happened to CJ Gardner Johnson? He used to be able to cover. Now he can't cover anybody. Like what's going on?
Don't know. Don't know. They got problems there. We should mention that Fangio did say that CD Brown should be back after the bye in terms of starting to work. There's no time what week they would activate him. He hasn't practiced since last season, so it's hard
Yeah.
to imagine. After 3 practices, they're going to activate him. Like it would have to be in a playoff situation. Then you would consider doing that. But
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with him. Uh, but look, overall, they have a lot to clean up, a lot to correct. The corrections, I couldn't imagine it being a coach like correct, 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 correct. This is an issue. Correct, correct, correct. Both sides of the football, special teams. But yet, folks, it's never as bad as they say it is. But maybe it is. No, I'm just joking.
All right,
But
that was though a significant little nugget. We'll get into nuggets now.
yeah,
That came out of the press conference is that Vic Fangio expects Sidney Brown to be at practice once they get back from the bye week and off IR, and we'll see how quickly they can get him in.
well,
I mean,
designations for return, like they would designate him because that's
correct.
you have to do that for him to practice. Then they have to make it. They have 21 days from the first day of practice
Mhm.
to activate him where he can't play. So it's I,
I'm laughing because does Vic seem like the type of guy to you that wants to wait this thing out 21 days before they make
no,
a
no,
decision?
but you can't. But again, the guy's been out since January. And what's sad? He was doing so well. People probably forget.
Mhm.
The word around the club was Brown really made a big jump, and he tears his ACL. What was it on special teams?
It was on special. It was weird because they started. Patricia was playing him as a nickel corner in
Yeah.
passing situations, and that was not going well. But he was doing well in run defense when he would come down. And yes, on special
Hmm.
teams, he was making a difference. I think he can help this defense. We'll talk about this
Oh yeah, but we
later
don't
in
know
the
what he
week,
looks like
right?
health wise.
But we have to. Yeah, he has to be healthy. And then the other part was Vic saying Cooper to Gene. And clearly he was asked, are you going to make a change here at slot with Avonte Maddox struggling? And Vic, who has not held back in the past, sort of took it easy on Avonte. He basically said he has not played that badly. There are just a couple of plays. And he might be right about that. It's just that 4 or 5 plays can make the difference in a game. And it does feel like there's 4 to 5 bad plays a game with Avonte. But he did say that Cooper was, I forget what the exact closing in. That was what he
Hmm.
said. Closing in on seeing more time as the nickel back. So
Look,
that's a change that could
yeah,
probably benefit the Eagles.
I agree. And that would have been look, had he never had that hamstring injury, at worst he would have been splitting time with Maddox or taking that job already.
Mm-hmm.
So and Maddox is only making 2 million, so it wouldn't be like so bad. And plus Avante could have also, as he did in training camp, where he was really their backup. He was actually running with the ones at safety at times. So they there's just a lot to correct here. There's just it's not a disaster. It's everything's correctable, but they've got a lot of hard coaching. The guys have to take responsibility. The players have to be better. Coaches have to be better. There's a lot of responsibility that's got to be taken here by everyone concerned. Got a lot of time left in the season. They only played 4 games, but it's more cleanup than I think we anticipated before the season started. Because you never know. Because stuff you see in training camp sometimes it never happens. Sometimes it does. But I don't think Trent Cole's coming out of retirement, so their pass rush. They're gonna have to figure something out.
No, and we learned, thanks to NFL media, I think it was Ian's report, we learned that the Eagles cannot trade back for Hassan Reddick. Not that they were going to do it anyway, but
Uh-huh.
there is actually a rule that you cannot trade for a player who you traded away to another team in it for a 2 year span. I don't know if you saw that,
Well, I
but
always thought it was the same season. Is it 2 years? Okay,
no,
cool.
it's 2 years. So
Were people
sorry,
actually
Hassan
talking
Reddick can't be
about this,
traded
that
back.
they actually trade back for him?
Yes, a
Really?
lot. No,
Really? Okay.
I mean it's a social media thing. I'm not
I
saying it's
know.
real, but it's mentioned plenty. Like we should really
Okay.
trade
Well, I know
back.
it's been speculated by fans because they're
Yeah, it
desperate. And
was
you know,
never going to
when
happen.
I do searches because I like to see what the fans are pissed off about, just because make sure we're looking at it if it's legit.
Uh huh.
You know, this Fire Sirianni stuff was complete nonsense, but it's comical because people just speculate and they feel like they have to they wonder if Jeffrey would do it. It's not the way he operates. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it won't happen after the season, especially if they don't make the playoffs.
Right.
I don't think we have to guess what would happen then, but this is it's not as bad as people think, but man, there's just so much going on here with this team.
I think I'm gonna title this video on YouTube when it
Yeah.
comes out, a quote that you've used now like 5 times, just about a
Uh-oh.
lot more work than we
It
anticipated.
is. It really I we try to tell people that the pass rush was not good to start the season, but
We
you
did.
can't know. You don't know until you get there, right?
Right.
Well, look, we knew the backup receiver group was not very good. Okay, that was not a secret. Okay, anyone knows this.
Mhm.
But I didn't think it was this bad.
No.
Again, you don't know till you get there, and you go, "Oh my, I couldn't even imagine being in this front office and like, what the hell we have here."
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, that's enough of
All
that.
right, so let's we'll finish it off with a little bit of look at transactions and snap counts in 1 second. Before we go on, it is a red October, baby. That's right. Yes, the playoffs for Major League Baseball are finally here. The Phillies are seeded and it's locked in, and I can't wait for some playoff Phillies baseball. There is nothing like a Phillies home game in the playoffs. It's been compared to an SEC football game because of how crazy and passionate the fan base gets and the intensity on every single pitch. And if you want tickets to Red October to see the Phillies play, we'll get them on the Game Time app. It is the best app to use to get tickets and to see your favorite teams play live. There's nothing like seeing the sporting event live and up front. And Game Time helps because it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You get what you want, you know what you want. And with just 2 or 3 taps on your smartphone, you'll have the tickets. You'll have these super deals that they'll show you, which will give you the best value for the section or the row where you want to sit. I mean, it's just a great user experience. Okay. You get to see the view from your seat. And of course, you're covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. If you find a better price anywhere else, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. And of course, they have the event cancellation protection and job loss protection as well. Where else can you get that kind of a benefit? And by the way, it's not just sports, not just Eagles games or Phillies games, great concerts, great comedy shows are all available on the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Red October time with the Game Time app. Okay, Adam, we have it might be the bye week for the Eagles, but not for us. We got a lot of work on the main platform and of course on the Patreon platform as well. We had the Ask Greg Cosell live stream last night. We've got tonight's live stream that we do with ourselves. We have an Ask we had our Ask an Eagle last week with Quentin Michael.
Oh, so
Patreon
good.
members loved it and Quentin loved it. Just like Mike Quick loved it 2 months ago. Quentin loved it. He loved the questions. He was blown away by the high football intellect discussion that he was having with our Patreon members. And this is the type of stuff that you can only get on Inside the Birds. There's no other media company that I know that is giving people this kind of access
Knownness, yeah.
here. So Inside the Birds patreon.com/inside the birds. We're also going to get even more Xe and Oe and get to the heart of this quarterback situation. We're going to be talking with Brian Hoyer. Um, and have that up on our platform, Patreon platform, for all of our
By the
Patreon
way,
members.
yeah,
Yeah.
Brian, I've totally forgot this. I had to figure out what year it was. Yeah, he was with Sirianni in 2019 when Brian was the backup to
Was it
Kobe
Luck?
Brissett.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, Brissett. Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
Colts, and Nick was the OC. So yeah, he knows him, and he knows his Fangio system. He's working the media now. He is not retired. He told me he's not retired.
Hmm.
So it's kind of cool. We're having technically an active player. Yeah, he's not on a team, but he's available. So I cannot wait to. He's doing a lot of Patriots work because of he lives there in the area in Foxborough area, and he's doing stuff for the Patriots and their website and podcasting, and he works for NFL Radio as well. I cannot wait to talk to him, and that's it. So we've been looking to do something like this, but it's so hard to find a quarterback, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're with Sirianni. I'm like, yeah, 2019. So look forward to talking to him, and so that's patreon.com/inside the birds. Get on board, folks. It's really cool.
Good stuff. All right, a couple of transactions for the Philadelphia Eagles to talk to. First of all, we didn't really discuss this. John Ross gets to the team like late last week, right? Joins practice, wears number 38, not a number that quarterbacks traditionally
Can't
love
believe
throwing
he's
to.
38.
And then he's elevated it. I get that the Eagles were thin at receiver. They also had some receivers that had been with them since for at least a month now. Not just Marcus, Rosemary, Jack Saint, but they have another wide receiver on the squad, right? Didn't they have somebody
Uh,
else?
well, practice squad: Danny Gray, Kyle Phillips.
Yeah, yeah. And I get it. Those
Yeah,
guys aren't experienced.
yeah.
John Ross is. I just don't know what the expectation was there. But either way, Paris Campbell, who catches his first touchdown in quite a while. Nice throw. That was
Mhm.
a really nice play by Hurts,
Great
by the way.
throw. In fact, if you
Great
see the
throw.
defender
Hmm.
right next to Hertz's right shoulder, and
Hmm.
he angled himself and he made a great throw. I mean, it was. I have to ask. I forget to ask Cosell this. Ask
Hmm.
Greg this next time we talk to him. Oh yeah, but inside the tape for Thursday, we'll I'll ask him there. Did he think this was more of a scramble drill, or he thought that was game plan? So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. Look, John Ross was the thing about John Ross is nobody wanted him. He was on the street,
Yeah.
and the Eagles didn't even sign him to the practice squad till now because they were so low on numbers. And the fact that he played the first week,
Yeah. That surprised me a little bit.
yeah, yeah. Well, they had to. I mean, it's
Well,
ice
I
and
mean, I'm
chill.
not saying they would have fared any better with Danny Gray or
Yeah.
Marcus Rosemary Jackson. It just surprised me that you pulled a guy off the street and I've done it before, I
Kyle
guess.
Phillips has played before, but he's really a slot receiver. That's the
Yeah.
thing of the group of players you talked about on the practice squad. He's had playing time, but
Hmm.
he's a slot receiver. So Jahan Dotson could do that, but they need Dotson to be a factor. Somehow he's just got to take the bye, and when they come back, they really need him to be their third receiver. That's all they need him to be, is be a decent pass target, which he's not been so far. So far,
Yeah.
but they got a lot of season left.
There you go. Um, So, by the way, Campbell has now been elevated 3 straight weeks. He's out of elevation. So, if this
Yep.
guy wants to play for the Eagles, I should say, if the Eagles want him to play for them again, they are going to have to sign him to the 53. Now, I wonder this. This is sort of like the use relationship of the NFL. If he can no longer play for the Eagles, right, for the regular season, unless he's on the 53, and they just don't have room, what's the point of keeping him on the practice squad?
Well, no, there is. No, obviously, if somebody gets hurt, then they have to make room for him.
Yeah.
Someone's got to go.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It's kind of like with who's the running back retired who just wound up not being a good player? Rashad Penny.
Mhm.
How many weeks do we say, why the hell is he on the team?
Right.
Okay, now his situation was really they had a little bit of guaranteed money for whatever the coaches wouldn't play him. They didn't want him
Yeah.
clearly because they told you that he would never be active. He was only
Mhm.
active a couple weeks because they had someone got hurt. I think Boston Scott might have gotten hurt, but anyway. So you fast forward here with this situation with Paris Campbell. He's shown he could still play. Now, you mentioned this right now as we speak. They have 4 receivers on their active roster, their 53-man roster. Only 2 are healthy.
Mhm.
Brown and Smith. Brown, obviously, with a hamstring, should be available after the bye. He's close. And Devontae Smith with a concussion. He was not even at practice. Like he's not progressed to the point where he could even be out there. So you hope in 2 weeks he's ready to go. Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson. That's it.
Right.
So, I mean, do they really want to go in like they did this past game with just 4 receivers? It's
No.
risky.
I wouldn't want to do it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't. So I guess there might be a glimmer of hope for Paris, but who do you it'd be interesting to see who they would have to then make a roster move on, especially if they are planning to. We'll see. We'll have to see about Sidney Brown. But at some point, when they do activate him, and if they decide that when he's ready to play, they have to make a
I
corresponding
forgot
move
about him.
there.
Yep. That you're good point. I had not even thought he's a guy they have to make room for.
Yep.
Well, right now, if you look at the guys who are inactive, right, for this
Hmm.
past game, well, Kennard was actually active, but he didn't play. Kennard is, Fred Johnson's over him. We know, and he's not a left tackle. He's a right tackle or a guard. McKee, they're not cutting him. No way. Devin White, who's really not. He's obviously never going to play unless somebody gets hurt. Lane, of course, is hurt. Trevor Keegan, they're not going to cut him. Now, Byron Young is yet to play.
Hmm.
It's a guy that we'll see. We'll see. He got through waivers and Eagles claimed him, but we'll see. To me, he would be a candidate because he hasn't contributed yet.
Right. Right. All right. So, although he's a defensive lineman, you know how the Eagles are protective of those, but
I
we will
know they
see.
love having their 6 or 7 D tackles.
Right. So, as we get into this is a great segue into snap counts. I'll tell you who's not getting cut, even though he barely plays. Ben Van Sumeren lining up at fullback.
One snap.
One snap at fullback. So there's two guys that played one snap in the backfield that shocked me. One was Ben Van Sumeren, right? The other was, and this didn't shock me, it just shocked me when it happened. It was the first play of the game. Will Shipley lined up in the pony with Saquon Barkley. That's the play where Barkley got free up the right sideline and Dillon threw it out of bounds. But Will Shipley was on the field in that formation and then never played another offensive.
What is their issue with I don't understand. Will Shipley, they had 4 motion plays with him in week 1. We know he's fast. He's got good cherry quickness.
Yeah.
They're struggling to move the football. Why will they not play him more? We need to ask DeCecco when Andrew interviews him for his rookie diary.
Yeah.
Like, what are they telling him? I don't. What are we missing here with him?
Or yeah, like you had something in mind, right? You had something in mind on the first play of the game with your pony package, which last time you used, you would throw you would you put Shipley in motion, you created a fake bubble screen, and you threw it to Devontae Smith for 20. Oh, good stuff. What is it after the first play doesn't work that you're like, no, that's it, no more Will Shipley? Like we only have one play in mind for Will Shipley, the first play of the game,
and you cannot move the football. You need to help your quarterback. You need to help your offense. Usually they don't think typically they just don't think the guy's ready. That's the way it works with particularly younger players. They don't trust him yet. They like the player, we know that, but they don't think he's ready yet. It's only 4 games, but at some point he could help them. I just look at it this way. You mentioned the pony package. When they get Brown healthy, right? When assuming he's ready after the bye with Smith, once he's ready to go, with Goddard, with Barkley, if they run the pony package, whatever, or just put a lot of speed out there, a lot of talent. Look out, man. There's a lot of possibilities for all the negativity we had to talk about because it's our job. When it's not good, we got to point it out. There's a lot of upside for this offense when everyone's healthy. Don't forget about that. You saw week 1. Yes. They weren't even that crisp week 1, but they got the job done. Right. There's a lot of upside with this offense. A tremendous amount of upside.
All right, we'll finish it off with some more snap counts real quick. We'll pause to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. There will be a wonderful selection of high-end pre-owned automobiles that you just really can't find anywhere else. And that's okay if you can't make it in. They have a great website, SkyMotorCars.com. They have fantastic customer service. We've talked about this. Buying a car these days is a very, very different experience than even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's not customer friendly anymore. You're almost on your own. Feels like you're swimming. You will not get that type of experience at Sky Motor Cars. You will get so much customer service and help that it will be a breath of fresh air.
And by the way, they have lower end cars. Oh, it's not just high end cars. They have all sorts of prices. You could sell your car to them like we did. You could buy a car. Obviously, it's what they do. And we've talked about this for years now. They ship across the country. I remember them delivering a car to Marcus Peters, veteran corner. He hasn't retired. I don't think Peters is retired, but anyway, he's not on the team. They delivered to Baltimore. I I know they have deals with Carson Wentz. They've dealt with
Mhm.
Carson for many years, probably delivered cars to him. So dealt with I know they had B-ball Paul Reed as a client.
Yeah.
Now
N'Kobe,
Fletcher Cox,
Avante, they've had
yeah,
deals with him. Yeah.
Sheldon Brown, going back to
Quentin
Sheldon Brown.
Michael.
Yeah. Quentin Q, right.
Yeah.
Jason Avant knows him. Yeah, they
Mhm.
Brett Shoulder and Sky Motor Cars in beautiful Westchester, right off 202.
All right, so the snap counts, we mentioned the BVS, Ben Van Sumeren playing fullback a little bit. Cooper DeJean only got 1 snap. It's weird how he played 6 early on, and then they just don't play a lot of dime. So just not been in their menu. So it will be very interesting to see if he starts to become bigger part of the nickel package in that first game against Cleveland coming out of the bye. And Alex Hunt played 5 snaps, so that's a development. I have thoughts on this that we'll get into later in the week. I just
Okay.
this is the second time in 5 years that the Eagles have used a 3rd round pick on a player who is considered developmental, right? And you've heard me say this before. It's okay because a draft is about 3 years down the road.
Yeah,
But I always also say it doesn't mean year 1 is supposed to be like some gimme
sure,
freebie. You don't
sure.
make any impact.
Yeah.
They had that with Davion Taylor. It didn't work out. There
Well,
are
they
some
reach for it.
similarities.
Yeah, but they reach. Okay.
But there's some
What,
similarities here in that Jalix Hunt also did not play a lot of football. He did not play, just like Davian did not play a little.
I see what you
Jalen's
mean.
only played 1 year at the end at a very small school. I love the traits are great. He was drafted on traits and future more than
Sure.
what he is right now.
I
So
get it. But one thing I would add to that with
Mhm.
Davion Taylor, we had teams tell us they had 6-round grades. Like other
I agree
teams
with
had
that.
6-round grades. With Alex Hunt, we know of a team that not only did they have a 3rd-round grade on him, the edge rusher coach went to the GM and said, I got to have this guy
Right.
because
Right.
he's really good kid, smart, length. I mean, but on your point, it's highly unlikely you're going to get much out of him year 1 because he's in the learning phase. He's really new to as an edge rusher.
Mhm.
But here's the thing: their pass rush is so anemic. On your point, put him out for 5 steps, get his feet wet. This is his
Yeah.
first 5 snaps. He's only playing on specials.
Yeah. Let's see what he
Now he
can
knows
do.
what it's like. See what happens. You see how he handled it. How did he respond to the 5 snaps? Did you see him when they did it? I forget.
It must have been the second half.
Okay. Probably in garbage
or
time.
late, I think it was later in the game.
Yeah.
But the more I watch, I sent you a clip of Cade Otton, who will never be mistaken for like, I don't know, who's the best blocking tight end, George Kittle, right?
George
Like,
feels really good. Yeah.
yeah, Cade Otton's good, and not Cade Otton bad, but I sent you a clip of him just putting
Yeah.
Nolan Smith down on the turf, like Nolan Smith weighed 100 pounds, and
Yeah.
this is like 2 weeks after Bijan Robinson did it, right? So at some point you got to say, all right, I might need to try something different here, see what the kids got.
Yeah, and finally, we should mention that it was not Nick Gates who went at center when
Yeah.
Juergens left for cramping. It's actually Dickerson moving over, which I thought was interesting.
Right. This is counter to their philosophy of not wanting to weaken 2 spots,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thought it was interesting.
Good for Stout in game. I mean, look, Dickerson played it. It was his first position in college center.
No, I thought it was left tackle. He was left tackle.
Left tackle. Okay.
Then he went to guard and center. Yeah.
Okay. But
All right.
we saw that. That was good.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.